Okay, so in the last video, we got our plugin built with, some basic functionality. When we press F, we spawn some cubes above our head. So now we decided that, okay, we are ready to go ahead and ship it. So I'm going to go ahead and show you how you can build up a very nice, or let me rephrase that, how to set up a very nice build environment where you can very easily build out your plugin and make rapid iterations with it. So you can easily compile it, zip it up, and upload it for either the initial submission or for updates later down the road. So to do that, let me actually head to, it's right here, my plugins folder where I want to do this, and I'm going to create a new folder just for it. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new folder, and I'm going to call this one YouTube tutorial. So let's open that, and there's nothing in here. Well, I'm going to copy one of the batch files. We can look through them and see what they actually contain. So I want to rename this one from FPS template to YouTube tutorial. So normally you would want to, at least in my case, if you're usually doing multiple engine versions, you're going to want to at least have some form of telling of what version that is. So in my case, I'm using the 4.27 engine version for these. So let's go ahead and look through what this contains. So for starters, what you need is an actual directory or a path to the RunUAT.bat file that is included inside of Unreal Engine. So this is included for 4.26, 4.27, 4.25, 5.0, and all that. So it's going to be in your install path for Epic Games. Then your engine version, engine, build, batch files, and RunUAT.bat. After that, you want to pass in of build plugins, and then you want to pass in the plugin path. So this plugin path is going to be the path to your plugin. And I just skipped over. So in my case, this goes to the Ultimate FPS template plugin. I don't want mine to go there. Instead, I want it to go to my plugin tutorial. So it's going to be Unreal Projects, plugin tutorial, plugins, spawn assist, and spawnassist.uplugin. So this will be to my plugin that was just created for this series. Next up, where do we want to package it to? So this is going to be the last parameter. So this is the directory of which we want to package it. So in this case, this is going into that UE4 development folder right here, then plugins, then the FPS template or FPS plugin, and then the folder of which version we want to use. So in my case, I'm going to go to YouTube tutorial, and then YouTube tutorial plugin 4.27, and then I don't remember why this was necessary, but then you pass in the IDE you are using. In my case, I'm using the Visual Studio 2019 toolchain. So that is all you need inside of here. And then the hold open bat file, this is for something else. So this is because if you launch this batch file right here, it's going to open and it's going to close, and all this stuff is going to run in the background. We're not actually going to be able to see any of the logs that get created with it. So what we do with this batch file is all it does is it runs our batch file. However, it keeps it open for us. So in our case, we just want to copy the name for it. So in this case, it's going to be build 4.27 YT tutorial. So build 4.27 YT tutorial.bat. And then we can save it and close it. So now that we believe we are good to go, I'm going to go ahead and close down the editor. Let's run our 4.27 hold open. Let's launch it. And you will see here, it is going through and it is going to start building the plugin. So I will be back once it is finished. And here, as you can see, we got build failed. So why would we get build failed even though we have no problem compiling our project with our plugin inside of it? Well, if we look through the logs that it generates for us, this is why I wanted to have it be displayed, because even though it failed, it still generated the folder and some information inside of it for us. However, that will not be what is required to submit. So if we look through it here, we can see, basically we can look through and see, okay, here's our plugin class. Here's one of our files that we created. And it's telling us on line 21 and 28 we are having an error for an explicit category specifier is required for any property exposed to the editor or blueprints in an engine module. So because that's what we are making, and there's a stink bug on my desk, we need to add a category to this uProperty and this uFunction. So in our case, we're just going to do comma category equals, let's call it spawn assist, just like so, and copy and paste that into our uFunction as well. Then all we have to do is recompile. So let's close down the log and let's delete the folder that it created for us. And then we can, once we are done compiling again, we can relaunch it one more time. And then see the results once it is ended. Okay, so we made it a lot farther. However, we still got build failed. Now what we can do is we can look through, and again, we see our class. So this time it's in our .cpp. And here our error is use of undefined type, a actor, and uWorld. Now that might seem really odd to some of you because we have zero problem using getWorld anywhere else. So for example, we're using getWorld here, and same thing, we're using a actor right here as well with no problem. And that's how it's almost always been, and it's most likely fine as well inside of packaging. However, with engine modules or plugins, things are a bit things are a bit different. So any type that you use, you really have to either forward declare or make sure that you are including it where you actually go through and use it. So you'll find, like with my data types file for some of my plugins where I'm using several different types, I have a bunch of different classes included for those types, because otherwise Unreal Engine or the build will fail to actually build the plugin. So what we know that we need to do is include a actor and uWorld. However, as a actor I believe should cover uWorld, we should only have to include a actor. If not, then all we have to do is include the header for uWorld as well. So what we can do to figure out what we need to include is go to Google, type in Unreal Engine, and then the class exactly as it is, so a actor, and here we can go to the documentation, and we will see the include is in the game framework actor.h. So let's copy this, go to our .cpp file, and paste it in as an include, rebuild, go ahead and close down the log, and delete the generated folder. And now that it's done compiling, let's go ahead and try to build it again. Okay, so we ended up with the same problem just for uWorld, but as you can see, the complaint of a actor is gone. So now all we have to do is get the include for uWorld. So we can just Google Unreal Engine uWorld, and it'll take us to the documentation, in which case we can see the include is include engine world.h. So from here, we include that as well. Just like before, we recompile, close our log. Once it's done compiling, we can go ahead and relaunch the batch file. Alrighty, so this time the build, as you can see, was successful. So we know that we are good to go. And if we look at our folder that it created, as you can see, it is a little bit different. Now it is more in line with the structure that is in our actual plugin right here, like so. So now we are basically good to go. We are almost ready to submit. However, we have to fill out some information inside of the uPlugin, as well as delete the binaries and the intermediate folder. So that's basically it there. Now I'm going to go ahead and add one more thing. So just to be clear, I'm going to go ahead and delete that folder because I want to add some content into it as well. And that content is simply going to be an example. So an example to use. So something you want to be wary of as well is you have to picture this from the perspective of somebody is going to, you can ignore these, somebody is going to take this, and this would be the people that are approving the plugin, and they're going to want to just slap it into a project and be able to test it out, right from the get-go. So you have to have some type of way for them to be able to do that. So just some example content in order to actually use the plugin. So in this case, we have nothing in our content folder. So what we want to do is we want to bring over our tutorial actor to spawn and bring it into our content folder. Now, we're going to have to do some work with some references. So what we're going to do is simply create or better yet, let's copy this tutorial actor to spawn and paste it right inside of here like so. And then what we can do in our third person character is simply, you can ignore this for now, change under, let's see, where that is the character. Oh, that's right, it got rid of it. So let's re-add the spawn assist character component, change the actor class to spawn to the tutorial actor to spawn. And of course, that's not showing me the path. So let me delete the old one really quick. Let's set it back to tutorial actor to spawn. So we know we're okay. And then just set it up as, what was it? Spawn actor above me. So we're back down to the way things were. Okay. So we're now using this actor. However, we would have a problem if we tried to submit this, because this actor, which of course is over here, has a static mesh. And if we look at the path, this static mesh is inside of game, geometry, meshes, and this material is in game, geometry, meshes. So they're not actually in our plugins directory. So this is going to cause some issues for, one, us packaging, and two, the end user, or the people that are trying to approve our plugin for, well, they're just not going to have references to it. Like, it's going to be pointing, the references are going to be pointing to something that doesn't exist. So we need to fix that. So let's create a new folder and call this example assets. And this is where we're going to put our static mesh and our cube material. So what we can do is go to geometry, meshes. Here's our cube. So what we're going to do is just simply move this cube into our example assets. Now we can do the same for cube material. However, I want to create a separate one instead. So I'm going to right click, create a new material, and call it m_example. And this material is just going to contain a simple color of, I'll do red, just to give it some strong indication that it's of, not default. Okay, so now when you compile and save, let's go back to our cube mesh here and change the material to our m_example. Compile and save. Now, as you can see, our actor is red. So we have the cube, which is now under spawn assistant, example assets. And this material is under spawn assistant, example assets. So we know we are good to go. And of course, these are all cubes, aren't they? Yeah, go figure. So we're going to have red walls. That's fun. Not really a problem, though. Okay, so we know we are good to go here. We have all of our assets contained inside of our plugin. So we're not going to have anything that is going to be referencing something that just doesn't exist, because it's all being distributed within our plugin. So the last thing we would want to have is some form of example character to do the exact same thing with. So again, that would be purely for the example. So what you would do is, either create your own example character or drag and drop the provided third person character into it. That's really up to you on how you would want to do that. But again, you have to have just an easy way for them to try it out. So I've even had, so for example case of my level editor here, this plugin got, it failed, I think, like 3 times for approval. One of them was me, obviously, but the one of the other ones was in relation to, they didn't actually set up the project as it was supposed to be. So they didn't follow the steps correctly, and they ended up failing it because it didn't work. And that was because it was set up improperly. So what they ended up having to do, I had already created documentation. All they ended up doing was, I guess, they refollowed documentation and set it up correctly again after I had emailed the support, or I responded to the failed response, and they were able to look back at it and make, test out and say, okay, it works, and then approve it from there. So again, this will be all stuff I touch on a little bit later, but now we know we are pretty much good to go. We have all of our references cleaned up, and the last thing we want to do before we rebuild it is right click on our content and go to fix up redirectors in folder. Save, close it, Go back and rebuild. Alrighty, now that we are built and the build was successful, we can close out of the log, and we have to do two things. So first off, let's open up our folder. We're going to click on binaries and intermediate and delete those, because when you're packaging, you do not want them in there, they do not want to see them in there, and it shrinks your file size down. Next up, we have to make sure we fill out the information inside of here. So inside of our .uplugin folder or file. So these are all things that we're going to want to put inside of our actual plugin over here as well. So let's work on that first. So let's go to our actual project, plugins, plugin name, and open up our uplugin in Notepad. So the first thing is going to be our created by URL. So this would be example website. So this could be like your website or something like that, or your YouTube page. Then we have the documentation. So again, this would again be to link to your documentation.com. Then we have the support URL, which could be, in my case, it's my Discord. So my discord.com/my blah blah blah. And after that, we have our marketplace URL. So here's the part that has been very tricky for me, and unfortunately I completely forgot how to find this again. So let me go ahead and figure that out really quick again. Alright, so I was able to figure it out, and that is thanks to the marketplace guidelines. So the way you can find that link is if you go to your publisher portal, go to marketplace, and open the marketplace guidelines. Once here, if you search for URL and go down a little bit, you will see here it has the uplugin descriptors. So it basically tells you all the information that you need to have. So for example, one thing we're going to have to add is whitelist the platforms of Win64. And then we have the marketplace URL. So this is for, well, basically an address that it can find it. Well, basically if you just read through here, it tells you all the information that you need to know. And this will tell you a lot about everything you actually have to do for submitting your plugin, such as aiding you in compilation. So here, for example, is how it runs through and builds it. So it takes in the path to the RunUAT.bat, then the path to the plugin, and then the directory at which it outputs the BuildPlugin to. So that's kind of all the stuff that we need to have there. So focusing on the marketplace URL. It says, for instance, if a seller finds their code plugin product to have a URL of this, which, for example, if I click on any of these, that lines up with my link right here. Then the following key and value should exist in the uplugin. So marketplace URL, let's copy this whole section, and because basically all we have to do is change up the product portion. So let's copy that and paste it in and remove the last portion. So then we have to replace it with our own. So what we have to do is add a product, and this is where we could go through and you would have to fill out all of this, unfortunately, create a new version and save changes and all that, because as it states here, keys, so presence whose value dictates the Epic Game Launcher address. So after the project or product has been submitted for approval, the marketplace value should contain the ID at the end of the product's seller portal URL. So as you can see here, this has nothing. But if we look at any of the other plugins, you will see it contains the corresponding ID, I guess you could call it. So this is something you have to do on your own. So in my case, I'm just going to spam it with whatever and hit save. So I think lastly, the only thing we need to do now is whitelist some platforms. So back to the marketplace guidelines. Here we have whitelist platforms, and then it's basically an array of the platforms we want to have whitelisted. So in our case, we don't want Win64. So what we have to do is add another section inside of here. So here's for reference, my other plugin. So whitelist platforms, then the array containing Win64. So follow it along with whitelist platforms. Then the array that contains, win64, like so. And we have to add a comma after default, indicating that it is the next entry. So that pretty much sums up everything you have to do inside of the uPlugin. So let's copy that and move it on over to the uPlugin of the one that we just built. So let's paste it all in there, save it, and we are ready to zip this up and get ready for submission. So what we need to do now is just right click and hit add to archive, and you want to create this as a .zip, not a .rar. And once that's done, you will have your package plugin right here like so. Then all you have to do is go to something like Google Drive or Mediafire or Mega, anything like that, and upload it. And then here in the next video, I'll show you what all you need to actually kind of go through and fill out inside of your publisher portal for the new product. So that is going to be all for this video. If you like what I'm doing and you want to help support me, you can find a link to my Patreon in the description below, where I have a Team Deathmatch series just for Patrons, as well as you get early access to pretty much all of my videos, such as this one. If you have any questions or anything like that, feel free to join my Discord that is also linked down below, and I'll try to help you out. So I'll see you in the next video.